Hello,
Hi,
I'm
Katie.
really excited to introduce you all to my wonderful sidekick, colleague, Rosalia Kovacs-Napier, co-director from ICEN, and it feels really special that you're my first interviewee to emerge proud and come out of the spiritual closet. Because we've spent the last year kind of journeying alongside each other and seeing each other in some very vulnerable situations, sharing from the heart, crying together, laughing together, doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things together.
Yes.
It feels really special that you're my first guest. So thank you for being here. It feels really exciting that we're going to give people kind of an inside view of ICEN during this campaign as well. I think so many people have said to us, what do you do at ICEN? Because we've kind of been doing things behind the scenes for so long now, and I think that's going to change now within the next few months. We'll be interviewing a few different people from ICEN over the course of this campaign and hearing more about what we're up to. So, Rosalia, I think if we just start by giving people an insight into your story, if you don't mind giving people a bit of background about how you became involved and what your process has been.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's probably the better way to start talking about that is like mentioning that I spent 19 years with multinational companies. And you can imagine in that world, basically it's a very different mindset what you are having. It's very result-oriented. It's basically I was a businesswoman with an international career, and also started my own business. And just after a while, I started to have more and more questions that is that all? And it has to be something else out there. And I felt like something was missing. And just from one day to another, it started to change my success. I was at that time owning a business, and I recognized some slowing down and some emptying around my business, which was very unusual because it was highly successful before, and it felt like it's in line with my thoughts and how I feel, and my motivation was not there anymore. And I started to feel a very deep existential crisis. And just suddenly, one day when I was traveling in the car with my husband, it's just a huge rush of energy came from my hands and feet, and I never experienced energy before. I never really had any religious background, so it was a very new experience, and it was with me for a while, and I was very fortunate that my husband is a Reiki master. So he had some idea about that energy and what it was. And after some days, I started to have some really intense energetic happenings and experiences, which was leading to Kundalini awakening, which was very dramatic, very strong physical and emotional process I was going through. And at one point, my heart opened, and I felt like my traumas in life, they're all kind of coming up. I got images of those, and the sorrow and the grief and everything attached to that was basically pouring out from my heart. And that's how it felt, basically physically coming out from my heart. And I felt the energy coming up and leaving through my heart. That was the longest process. There were some happenings before as well, but that was the most dramatic part, that it was leaving my heart, and I felt like all these traumas are leaving with it, and I was there for for crying 2 hours. And then it was going through. Then I felt at one point that it was just, I kind of blacked out, and it was going through my head, this huge energy. And I was like laying there on my bed. I remember that. And I was like looking up to the ceiling, and I saw a very bright white light. And everything was much brighter, and I felt like my heart is open, and I felt a huge unconditional love, and I started to laugh. And I was there, and I was just looking up, and everything was so spacious, and I felt such clarity in my head, and some kind of emptiness, which was a very, very meaningful emptiness. There was a lot in it. And my heart was open, and I felt love I never felt before towards everything, everybody. And I was just there with this unconditional love I never felt before.
So what you just described, I mean, we know that everybody has a very unique kind of awakening journey, but you just described a really kind of definite pattern which we see all the time in the spiritual emergence networks of you start to question your life, you have an existential crisis, what is the meaning, what is the point, what's all this about? And then you have some kind of an opening, a surrender as such, and then it opens up all of the channels to kind of trauma and psychological issues that we might have repressed from the past coming up, and then to kind of experience this omnipresent sense of love kind of thing. And that's what people report so much. I'm just wondering, when you said about, you know, Alex, your husband, being a Reiki master, whether you think that was the thing that kind of stopped you from going into kind of real extreme crisis at that point. Do you think that kind of saved you because you had a way of understanding what was happening to you? Because I know you didn't end up in the system despite having some really extreme experiences. You've never been hospitalized or anything. So I'm just wondering if you think that was the reason for that.
Yes, I think this was definitely one of the reasons. And the other reason is just before this experience, I started to study at Integral Academy in Hungary, where, you know, the Western psychology is integrated with the Eastern philosophies and methods. And so basically to understand what energy is, or the kind of context was there, and that was definitely the main reason why I didn't end up in hospitalized. And I think this experience was, let's say, was more understandable or more acceptable, but what happened later, that was definitely less.
I think that is so important, isn't it? Because that's the whole point of doing this campaign, is to try and prevent people going into extreme crisis because they have a way of understanding what's happening to them. So yes. Thank you for mentioning that, because it's so important.
And I have to also say, which is, I think, really important, that even that I had some kind of idea what Kundalini awakening is, this is not how I imagined. That it's like it feels like we have some kind of idea how it would be. At that time, I didn't know what it was, Kundalini awakening. I didn't get these two things together, and then I started to realize later, with more, you know, happenings attached to that it is that. After a while, I recognized it, but till that, it was like rather some kind of chaos. I didn't have such clarity. It was more on that, what is happening. It was some kind of chaos. And after a while, I started to have some understanding of certain phases of my process, which was very interesting as well. Like, I would have some kind of guidance, which now I can use so well in my work when I work with people.
And you do use it so well. I mean, you supported me throughout the last year, so hugely grateful for our connection in so many ways. I think one of the most important things we've kind of shared is, you know, I love how you say, you know, spirituality is about being real. It's about being authentic. It's not this airy fairy bullshit, as you say, because that's such a misconception. And, you know, we have to honor the dark side, the dark night of the soul that we quite often go into after the awakening. And I know you had a big experience of that as well, didn't you?
Yes, yes. I was in this loving everybody phase for 6 or 7 months. It was beautiful, but it was so devastating that, like, day by day it was fading away. And that was so painful. You know, this connection was fading away. And I felt more and more depressed because of that. And it felt like it's closing up. And I just understood later that it was not closing up, it was the opposite. It was opening up. So this means that this light, which I experienced before, this huge amount of energy was going through me and purified all these traumas, and that was basically the main work on me. At first it came this energy, and then it started to work on me and bring up more and more things, and I was overwhelmed with that, and it took me to a very dark night of the soul, and I was there, and it was a no man's land. I couldn't refer to anything, and anytime I just think about that, it's so emotional, you know. And this is my connection to people whom I'm working with, because I know what they are talking about, you know, that I was there and I feel their pain, what they are going through, and the only thing I can tell them is, you know, like, I'm kind of embodying the hope that everybody can go through that, and there is a healing process, and it has a meaning, and it's important to go through to be healed.
It's the only way, isn't it? It's the only way out is through.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
And that's the healing part. That's not the bad part. It's really difficult to go through, but that's the healing part.
Yeah. That's the paradox, isn't it? And the hardest thing to kind of realize when you're in it is that is almost the best part, the cleansing, the healing, the transformation potential. But you don't kind of see that until you're out the other side. And it never stops, does it? It's like we constantly have layers and layers of stuff to work through, as we know. We've spent some intense times together projecting our anger on each other and processing it, working it through. But it's brought us a lot closer, hasn't it? Because we've been able to do that. So it's been an amazing experience to be able to do that with you, and to get in touch with anger like I've never dared to before, in all honesty. So
I think it's so important to understand the so-called dark side is for us, and a lot of benefits are lying in that phenomena, like what we call darkness. There's a lot of strength there, and also the opportunity for healing is also on the dark side. It has a lot of benefits.
Would you mind describing some of your kind of darkest, or, you know, periods of the dark soul, or some of this kind of experience of your own shadow, and how you've managed to process and transform that, just to give people an example?
Sure. It's like it's very simple to say that I was basically at home, laying on the floor, and just crying, feeling absolutely hopeless. Like I had no desire to do anything. I had no motivation at all. I felt like I lost everything I liked before. And also I didn't know who I was. And that was very, very devastating experience, that I had no idea who I was. Because the person I understood I was before was gone. And all the things I liked or disliked I didn't know. It was like I would be a new person, you know, like newly born, and like I would need to discover the world again. But it was not like, you know, coming with this new energy. Oh, let's discover the world again. It was absolutely no desire or motivation or anything. What I had, I was there, and I had no idea how to go from there. And when I reached that point, and I basically gave up on fighting. That was a turning point, because I was trying to fight, let's say trying to fight before. You know, like fight, I mean like used to, I had plans all the time, you know, I was working in the business world. I always had plans and things to go for, and energized, and when I was there in the process, it was like it came like an idea, what about doing this? And when I tried to basically move, it was gone. There was absolutely no energy in anything I tried to do. That I was without any of my tools I had before.
It's so common, isn't it, that kind of battle between the ego and letting go of that facade, that identity that we've kind of spent so many years building up, and allowing the rawness underneath that. That's kind of the image that came to me when you described kind of being on the floor and not having known who you were. It's like feeling of being completely raw.
Yeah.
Is that
completely raw? That's a good expression. That I was completely raw and very, very vulnerable. Like I really felt like I was naked, you know, like extremely sensitive on food, on everything, on the world, and people, and everything. I was extremely sensitive, very vulnerable.
I mean, we've got so much material that I want to delve into with you, because it's obviously, I know you quite well now from working really closely together, but we've talked about, you know, the connection with physiology, and you have a lot of bodily experiences because you really have strong energy in your body. I don't experience Kundalini, well, haven't yet. I'll never say never about anything, but and we were just talking about kind of repressed emotions and how that leads to physiological diseases, but also just you saying there about sensitivities to food, you know, that's really common as well, isn't it, when people may not realize that they're in a spiritual process but develop food sensitivities, or, you know, pick up on emotional energies from other people, or whatever it might be. So there's so much stuff that I'm really looking forward to kind of talking about with you over the next few months. Is there anything else that you feel is really important to share with people, just kind of as we launch this campaign to try and normalize things? And I'm just trying to think, is there anything like that you would like to share that you think is really important for people to know?
I think I would mention to show up is really important. To show up. I have a lot of insights during my process, and one of them was like being a bridge and what it means. It had so many different meanings and so many insights I got in connection with being a bridge. And one of them was about showing up, like being authentic and show up and tell what you are going through and what you have, and this is the bridge to the others, and this is how we can achieve to change the paradigm. Because I'm sure, and we know that, and thousands of people are waking up all around the world.
Yeah,
we all show up. We can be that amount of people who are basically turning around, you know, what we say is normal now. We see that a majority of the people are having experiences. So what is normal? That normal is here. What is normal is here, and there's a huge chance to change the world, just to show up.
So important. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And it's like, it's something else that I've learned a lot from you as well, about kind of how to show up authentically and speak the truth in a really compassionate way, even though it might be something that people don't want to hear, because that's something that we all find really difficult to do, you know, is actually speak the truth, because we know it might hurt. But when we don't do that, we're denying ourselves, and that just kind of perpetuates this whole cycle. So
yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful for you, Katie, for being here with me, and also this campaign is, I really believe that it's so important, and just thank you for all your dedication. Hard work on that, because I see it every day.
Well, likewise, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So yeah, right back at you. I think we've mirrored each other a lot, haven't we? And just, yeah, so grateful for your support and for your huge amount of work that you put in behind the scenes with ISEN, and which people will learn about. And I'm so pleased to be able to introduce you to the world in this way, because I know you've spoken at a couple of conferences, but not really in depth about your personal stuff. So I'm really, and you've such wisdom. So I'm really excited to share that with people, and so grateful that you're willing to do that. So thank you. Far from the hard-nosed businesswoman that you used to be. I can't imagine that at all. Thank you, Rozalia.
Thank you.
We shall have another interview very soon.
Great. Looking forward.
See ya.
See ya.